would like to look at our education system and how it fares globally. And I think the first thing that you notice is that our education system, in fact, is derived from the British education system for historical reasons. And this is largely due to, in fact, all the credit should really go to the first president of Kenya, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. Kenyatta spent a substantial number of years in Britain and came to understand the system, in a way that helped us to steer clear, for example, of ideology. If you look at the line that was pursued by Mwalimu Nyerere or Milton Obote, you will find that this was ideological. To them, education was a means towards ideological indoctrination. Whereas for Kenyatta, education was supposed to be a means towards enlightenment. And gathering, from his own background, where he studied anthropology under Malinowski. He felt that education should never be ideologically inclined. It should enrich the experiences of people, and also help them move politically, economically, and socially. And this was a big plus, for Kenyans, because if they had taken it as an ideological system, then they would have been bogged down just like Tanzania and Uganda were bogged down, with Milton Obote's Common Men's Charter and Nyerere's Arusha Declaration. So Kenyatta steered clear of that. And within the Kenyan context, there were other education traditions. For example, Muslims had their own system of education, which they did not abandon, but made the necessary adjustments. Like, for example, in the morning, Muslim children will go to school, and then in the afternoon, they would go to the local madrasa. And of course, they got something out of those two experiences, and they were able to keep them separate without being completely alienated, from the education system. Because if they had not done that, then they would have abandoned their own tradition, and as the English say, they would have fallen between two stools, but they were prudent enough and practical enough to realize that, there is something to be gained out of returning the traditional system of education. And then, of course, education can be affordable or it can be expensive. So how does it become affordable? By actually being localized. And it becomes expensive when one feels that, the education system outside is much better than the education system internally. But the reality is, depending upon the level of education, like for example, it doesn't make any sense to go and do undergraduate studies, in foreign universities, because all undergraduate studies are based on more or less the same kind of curriculum. So if you're studying economics, then the textbook that you're going to use is Samuelson's. So whether you're at Harvard, at Oxford, or Nairobi, that would be the text that you would be using. Although at a postgraduate level, because of the facilities and the experience outside the country, in leading universities there, then you can benefit, out of that. Although even at that level, it is possible to create your own institutions, that have the same standards, as those in other places, but only if you invest in those institutions. And it is interesting that, for example, at undergraduate level, you never find, for example, a Frenchman, going to Britain, to do undergraduate work, or going to America, only after they have finished, within the local system, then just to gain an added experience and dimension, would they go outside, But in our case, I think also because of feelings of, inferiority or inferiority complex, then you feel that, those standards are unattainable. But in fact, that is farther from the truth. Because even if you looked at universities like Oxford, Sorbonne, and others, these actually started off as high schools. And then gradually became the kinds of institutions that they are today. So there's no reason why we couldn't also have taken the same trajectory. And that is also true of other societies. It doesn't mean that we should ignore, completely what is offered outside, but we must not worship to the extent that we worship. We think that is, all and be all in terms of what you can get, but you can build your own institutions if you have the right psychological mindset. And of course, it took centuries, for those institutions outside to develop into what they are. But we can also benefit, from their failings and avoid, the kinds of failings that they might have gone through. Whatever name you give, whether you call it competence-based curriculum or whatever, it has something to do with, being involved in the education of the child. Because the closer you are to the child and the more guidance that you give, then the child is likely to benefit, from that contact. But it doesn't matter, whatever system you choose, because all systems have to undergo changes at one time or another. And these changes brought about through personalities, through circumstances, and through other factors. So one has to always bear in mind this reality, that systems are dynamic, and they are changing, and they will continue to change. And the extent of the changes are dependent on the circumstances.